Hello, everyone. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to dive into a story filled with trust, betrayal, and the moment when someone decides to rise from the ashes. We'll follow Dieu and Thuy as they face their final divorce hearing, confront past wounds, and discover what it truly means to fight for freedom and love. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next videos. On the day of the hearing, Thuy thought she held all the power. She assumed Dieu was still confused, still had feelings for her, and that he would sign the papers without a second thought. But what she didn't expect was that Dieu already knew the truth. He didn't shout, didn't lash out. He simply waited for the perfect moment to act. So, what happens in that courtroom? Will Dieu fall into Thuy's trap and follow her script? Or will he turn the situation around in an instant? And when the courthouse doors finally close, what awaits him? A new chapter of freedom or another round of heartbreak? If this story has you hooked already, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the next part will keep you on the edge of your seat. The story truly begins when Dieu enters the courtroom, his heart steady, already set on letting go. His meeting with the village chief had ended with a weight in the air so heavy it felt like it pressed on his chest. The room still echoed with the faint sound of pens scratching across paper, finalizing decisions that couldn't be undone. Each form signed, each page turned, closed a chapter that had defined their lives. Dieu stood, calm and deliberate. When his eyes met Thuy's, there wasn't a flicker of emotion. Years of love, laughter, and shared memories, all gone. His gaze didn't carry anger or sorrow. It was the look of someone who had already let go. He gestured toward the stack of documents on the table, relics of a dead marriage, and in a voice that was measured, almost brittle from years of pain, said, "I'll see you in court tomorrow." No hesitation, no room for second thoughts. Thuy said nothing, her eyes fixed on the papers as if sheer anger could make them burn. She turned, step by step, each footfall echoing in her mind like a wound reopening. Afternoons of laughter, hands held in the rain, glances that once spoke warmth, now replaced with icy distance. No weakness, no forgiveness, only resolve. She whispered to herself, words as cold as frost. No matter what I do, I won't let him and her be happy. Back in the house, an eerie stillness took over. Everything felt unfamiliar. Thuy's mother looked up, concern etched deep in her features. "Where have you been all this time?" she asked, her voice heavy with worry. Thuy's gaze fell to the floor. "I'm tired, Mom," she murmured, shoulders slumped, a fragile shadow of herself. Her mother's heart couldn't remain silent. "You've seen Dieu. He's tried to find you. I know he loves you. He just wants things back the way they were." Each word struck Thuy like a blade, memories of hope and longing colliding with bitterness. Thuy's head shot up, eyes burning with a fire that had been restrained too long. "Mom, stop. He doesn't belong here anymore. Don't mention him." Her words cut sharply, slicing through the stillness. Her mother stayed quiet, tears brimming but refusing to fall. Helplessness hung in the air, the pain of seeing her child retreat inward with no way to reach her. "You've been gone so long," her mother whispered. "It hurts me to think of Dieu. He waited for you, reached out, tried to make things right. I don't want you to live alone forever." The words struck Thuy's heart like blows. She felt the urge to spill long-hidden truths, but forced herself to stand. "I am not weak," she reminded herself. Yet, just as she was about to leave, her mother's trembling voice called again. "Thuy, there's no turning back. You have to face the truth." Those words made Thuy pause, frozen in the doorway. Unshed tears threatened, yet she moved forward, carrying her unhealed sorrows like shards of glass hidden in the dark. Behind her, her mother watched helplessly. Perhaps this was not the end, but a comma in a sentence of pain, a pause before a long journey. That night, Thuy began her internal battle. Morning arrived, soft and cold, sunlight filtering through the window of a quiet house. Diep stood before the mirror, adjusting the collar of his crisp white shirt. His black suit fit perfectly, sharp and disciplined, yet his posture betrayed the weight he had carried for years. This wasn't a normal day. It was the day of the hearing, the day of finality. He exhaled slowly, looking at himself. The corners of his eyes carried fatigue, but his expression held unwavering determination. "Today is the last day," he whispered, a quiet vow to himself. The door creaked. Huyen appeared, wearing a simple sweater, holding the door frame as if afraid to disturb the fragile balance. Concern and faith mingled in her gaze, a quiet belief in the man she had chosen. Diep smiled weakly, a small gesture masking the storm beneath. He took her hand, small and cold, in his strong grip. "Do you trust me, Huyen?" he asked, voice firm, even if his heart trembled. "Yes," she nodded, eyes glistening, fear still lingering. "I'm afraid she won't leave us alone, afraid she'll hurt you again." Diep held her close, steadying her, steadying himself. "I have everything ready," he said softly. "The papers, the evidence, all of it." His glance swept toward the sleeping Maya, her teddy clutched tightly. The sight softened him for a moment. "I'll protect you, Huyen. I'll protect you and Maya. No one will hurt us again." Outside, the wind stirred the trees. The world continued, unaware, while inside this quiet room, life was poised on the edge of change. Huyen smiled weakly, eyes glimmering, and nodded. "Eat something, then I'll take Maya to school. I'll wait afterward." Diep shook his head. "I have to go to court. It's time. It's time for this to end." She didn't stop him. She only stepped back, giving space, giving strength. Keys in hand, she opened the door, watching him leave. The car engine broke the morning silence, then faded as it carried him toward the courthouse. "He has to win," she whispered, a silent prayer for the man who held her heart. Diep arrived at the courthouse first, stepping out of his black car with measured calm. He adjusted the button of his jacket, trying to shield himself with a layer of strength he had carefully built over the years. In his hands, he carried his briefcase, meticulously packed with papers and evidence. Each step he took was firm, yet if you looked closely, there was a slight slump in his posture, a subtle weight of the burdens he had carried alone. He exhaled slowly, steeling himself. "Today, it all ends. I have to be strong. For Huyen, for Maya, for myself." The sound of heels clicked against the stone steps. Day turned. Thuy appeared. She walked with purpose, not hurried, not slow, but measured. Her face was perfectly composed, hair falling softly over her shoulders. Dark, elegant attire, making her appear serene, dignified. A woman wounded, but not defeated. If you didn't know the story, you might think she was the victim of this divorce. Day nodded slightly, keeping his composure. "Have you arrived already?" he asked, voice neutral, slightly hesitant. Talking to someone who had once been your wife as if they were a stranger didn't come naturally. Thuy smiled faintly, just enough to appear polite, but nothing more. "Yes, today should be quick," she said, words floating lightly in the air. Yet behind that calm surface, her mind was a battlefield. This wasn't surrender. It was calculation. Dee didn't realize that. He assumed her composure was exhaustion, resignation. She adjusted her jacket subtly, fingers tightening ever so slightly. A small gesture he missed. Her plan was ready. Today, she wasn't just signing papers. She was aiming to inflict the maximum damage he could feel, though he wouldn't yet know it. As they entered the courtroom, the door clicked sharply behind them. White light illuminated the long table where the divorce documents lay, like a sentence waiting to be pronounced. The judge had yet to arrive. Dee's lawyer sat quietly in a corner. Thuy remained calm, gaze fixed on her thick file. Dee, on the other side, had no idea the file held more than divorce papers. The courtroom felt heavy, tense. When the judge began reading the proposed division of assets, everyone held their breath. Regarding the house, the judge stated, "Mrs. Huyen requests sole ownership without division." Time seemed to freeze. Thuy's lawyer moved papers softly, but the subtle sound echoed like a drumbeat in the room. Thuy sat upright, hands resting gracefully on the table, expression calm, almost icy. She didn't immediately look at Dee, tilting her head slightly as if waiting to gauge his reaction. A faint, almost imperceptible smile appeared on her face, sharp as a blade. Day remained still. He didn't react in shock or anger. He placed his pen on the table slowly, exuding a serenity that unnerved Thuy. She frowned, sensing the first cracks in her plan. Dee's lawyer stood, holding a smaller file. "Your Honor," he said, voice firm but calm. "My client agrees to the divorce. However, the division of assets, specifically the house, cannot be based on the information presented by Ms. Thuy." Thuy paused. Erroneous. That word struck her mind like an alarm. Her gaze flickered, cautious. For the first time since the hearing began, she met Dee's eyes. She sensed something. She just didn't yet know the extent. Dee's lawyer continued, "We have evidence proving the entire investment in constructing the house was registered as a premarital asset. Moreover, throughout the marriage, Ms. Thuy was always listed as the owner, but did not contribute financially as claimed." Thuy's fingers clenched slightly, leaving faint marks in her palms, but her face remained a mask. There are also records of previous conversations between Ms. Thuy and other involved parties, showing she planned to transfer all property to her name before the divorce, the lawyer added. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Thuy leaned forward, voice low but audible to Day. "Have you been following me?" Day didn't flinch. Calmly, he replied, "I loved you, but that doesn't mean I'll let you destroy everything." Rage flickered in Thuy's eyes. She leaned in, whispering, "You think you've already won?" Day leaned slightly forward, hand on the table, eyes steady but full of pain. "This isn't about winning or losing. I just won't let myself be used by someone I once called my wife." Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. Thuy's plan had gone awry. But the worst blow wasn't that she failed. It was that Dee, once naive and vulnerable, was now awake, aware, and untouchable. The judge broke the tension. We will review the application for division of property based on the documents provided by Mr. D. Hearing adjourned for now. Everyone stood. Thuy remained seated, staring at D's back as he left. She no longer thought of winning, only of what had been lost. The courtroom door closed behind him with a sharp click, yet to D, it was the sweetest sound he had heard in years. Years trapped in frustration and doubt, now released. The house, the asset both had fought for, was divided fairly. No victory, no loss, just freedom. D stood at a courthouse entrance, eyes closed, taking a deep breath. A weight that had pressed on him for so long lifted. His lawyer patted his shoulder. "Congratulations," they said simply. D responded with a genuine smile, rediscovering an emotion he thought had been buried. He walked slowly toward the car, unhurried, light in his steps. He didn't look back. Behind him, Thuy remained motionless in the courtroom, a part of a chapter he had closed. The car stopped in front of the house. Huyen was on the porch, hands damp from watering plants. No words were spoken for a moment. Day approached, weary but at peace. "I'm home now," he said softly. Huyen pressed her lips together to hold back tears. "So, it's over, right?" Day nodded. "Yes, from today, I'm free." He paused, looking deeply into her eyes. "Free to be with the person I've chosen?" Huyen reached out, gently stroking his cheek. D, surprised by the tenderness, held her hand briefly. Inside, Maya's laughter rang out. The little girl ran toward him. "Daddy's back!" she shouted. Day knelt, holding her tightly. For the first time in years, there was no bitterness, no resentment, only warmth and peace, like the soft light of the setting sun spilling into the house. He looked at Huyen, smiling sincerely. "Thank you for waiting for me," she whispered, voice trembling, but full of affection. "Now you don't have to go anywhere. This is your home." Day looked up at the sky. The setting sun shone as if welcoming him to a new chapter. The divorce had ended with a full stop, but today was not an ending. It was the beginning of a story filled with freedom, love, and hope. Day and Thuy's story is a tense journey of trust, betrayal, and ultimate self-discovery. On the day of their final divorce hearing, Thuy believes she holds all the power, planning to take everything while Day remains unaware. But Day is calm, prepared, and ready to protect what truly matters: his freedom, his daughter Maya, and Huyen, the woman he loves. The courtroom becomes a battlefield of strategy and hidden truths, where every document and every gesture carries immense weight. When the judge makes a fair decision, Day finally experiences a sense of liberation he hasn't felt in years. Yet, as the dust settles and freedom seems within reach, the story hints that not all battles are over. What challenges lie ahead for D and those he loves, and will true peace ever last?